Hello, welcome to the UEA Catholic Society Podcast. This is Galilee episode 5. I'm Jamie.
I'm Ben.
I'm Luke.
And welcome to episode 5. A bit of an interesting episode because there's a high chance this might be the last Galilee episode for quite some time, or maybe even forever, because we're reaching the end of the academic year now. So the chances of us getting together to do this again are slim-ish, and I'll be quite busy next year because I'll be doing a PGCE. Ben will be in his final year. Luke, tragically, is going to study a master's in Nottingham. Not that in of itself is a tragic thing.
Well,
I kind of is.
But sadly, of course, he won't be here in Norwich. However, I mean, God willing, if we miraculously have spare time, we could always arrange another meetup. So maybe you might see us again, but
season finale, not series finale.
yeah, season finale. Yeah, so true. That's an excellent way to put it. Yeah. So this is probably the last Galilee episode of, I guess, the first season, and hopefully there'll be more to come, but we'll see. But anyway, welcome. So, these guys have already been discussing stuff today because they very, as diligent Catholics, they went to Mass at the cathedral earlier while I was sleeping in bed. So, they got onto some interesting topics. Is there any particular one you guys would like to start with then?
Well, we were talking a lot about euthanasia and assisted suicide and the right to life, particularly with Keir Starmer saying that he's going to make assisted suicide legal if he becomes Prime Minister.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. Like, what is the faithful Catholic response in a position like in any real election, but especially in something like this, where, I mean, fundamentally, we don't have to play this game. Like, the outcome of the election is pre-known. Everyone knows what's going to happen on election day. Now the more specifics. How badly do the Conservative lose? But I don't think anyone is under any preconditions that Keir Starmer will not be the next Prime Minister of the UK.
Yeah, it does seem quite likely. It does raise the whole point, and I'm sure this is something non-Catholics also think about as well. Because it's just the sense of is there any point actually voting? It's the idea of does your vote actually hold any real value? And to be fair, as Catholics, there is the understanding that as Catholics we do have a certain duty to be somewhat involved in the politics of the nation that we live in. We can't kind of divorce ourselves from that completely, but it's kind of tricky because, So, it kind of is, because it's gone to the point now in the Western world where most political parties with any significant influence, or that are capable of significant influence, are just all pretty awful in their own ways. I mean, for a long time, not that I've ever been too active in politics. I mean, I've only voted once, I think. I've always been more, whenever I have, I've considered the Conservatives just because, and not even, partly from an economic point of view, but also largely just because morally, just the fact that the Conservatives aren't as bad as Labour in some areas, or they weren't, at least in the past. Nowadays, it's kind of more of a bloodline.
I feel like in some other countries, you can say both, in some more than just both, but all of the political parties have their own problems. In England, if you were given a list of policies, they could be either of them. You could shuffle together Labour and Conservative policies and you won't be able to tell the difference. They are fundamentally the same party.
I think where the difference is there are the extremes on both sides. So within the Conservatives, I think there's a group of 80 politicians who are, well, there's a mixed bag for pro-life stuff, actually. There's pro-life politicians on both sides. Someone like Jacob Rees-Mogg is staunchly Catholic, but then you might disagree with economic policies.
Yeah.
I do. But I guess it's also about who your local MP is, more in this country. And in terms of voting, figuring out where your local MP stands on these issues, because you might have a Labour politician who's pro-life, but it's a Conservative politician who isn't. But I think, you look at Diane Johnson's bill that she proposed to make abortion legal until birth.
Yeah.
Someone like that, if she were to get any grasp of power, that is incredibly dangerous for millions of lives.
So obviously we've got quite a peculiar system. I think it'd be interesting to look at it from a hypothetical of, we know both sides broadly support abortion, but obviously Labour is stronger in their support. If you had a pro-life Labour local MP and a pro-choice Conservative or pro-death Conservative local MP, who should you vote for? Assuming, let's say, for example, the Conservative Party as a party was committed to the abolition of abortion, which obviously they are not, and the Labour Party was committed to the expansion, but your local MPs have flipped on that issue. Should you vote in your local or national interest? Because unfortunately, you have to do both at the same time. You don't get to vote once for your local interest and then once for national.
Yeah. So, yeah, that sort of dilemma of whether you would vote nationally or locally. I mean, my initial thought on that is, yes, I suppose you could argue that, well, even if your local MP is, for like Labour, is pro-life, despite the party being the opposite and being the other way around with the Tory candidate, I suppose you could make the argument that, well, it will make more of an influence to vote nationally than locally, because even if you have a pro-life local MP, if the rest of their party is not really like that, then you could argue that the general impact of that will be kind of limited. Because a lot of policies that are related to sort of pro-life issues and whatnot, they're usually going to be national, they're not going to be at a local level. Having said that, getting a pro-life MP into a position of power, that's also a good thing, because then you've got some influence, and they can obviously influence the rest of their party. So yeah, that's a tricky one, to be fair.
There is always the option for Catholics voting to spoil the ballot, which is a valid political move. I recently found out that the spoiled ballots are always shown to be candidates, so you can spoil it by voting no one here represents my views on abortion or on assisted suicide, and you can really sort of bring home that you want a pro-life party or a pro-life position. So the option to email your MPs, that's always a good find where they stand on it. I think you'd have to. I think for this election, issues of life seem to be more prevalent than in previous elections, and voting needs to be done on the right to life, fundamentally.
Yeah, do you think it's okay for a Catholic to be essentially a single issue voter on abortion or euthanasia?
I think most of the issues we have stem from that.
Yeah.
I think issues around immigration, homelessness, welfare and support all stem from the issue of life, because if you don't have a society that values life from conception until natural death, you do not value people when they are in the prime of their life.
Speaking of emailing your MPs, didn't you actually email an MP? And you actually got a response, didn't you?
I did. Shout out to Ruth Edwards, the MP for Rushcliffe constituency. I emailed her a few weeks ago about the vote's been moved, but it was about a vote on both Diane Johnson's amendment to legalise abortion up until birth and a amendment to lower the age of abortion from 24 to 22 weeks, which will be in line with most modern day countries. Her response was that she would look into it basically and come to the conclusion. Fortunately, not as pro-life as I'd like, saying she does support abortion, but a great first step. And I think a lot of people are scared to reach out to the MPs, but that's their job. So if you have this issue, email your MP. Right to Life has so many great structured emails that you can use, and good templates. Reach out to your MP, reach out to the people around you. I think it would really be momentum in pro-life movement.
Yeah, I think you can fall under, I suppose it would technically be considered something like the tragedy of the commons, where you assume you're not going to get a response from your MP, so no one ever does. But if everyone did email your MP, then you would get a response. Which I think happens with a lot in politics. You just assume your vote or your political action or whatever won't matter, so then you don't do it. But then everyone does that, and then you don't realise that if you actually all organised, essentially, you did have the chance to change it.
Yeah.
Change the outcome.
On that with the munch and Pringles. While the Pringles are the topic of conversation, for those viewing, how do you eat your Pringles? Because me and Ben just noticed something rather disturbing with Luke. So me and Ben, we're healthy, well-adjusted men for the most part, or at least we like to think so.
Yeah.
And when we eat a Pringles, like as Ben mentioned earlier before we started recording, it's kind of tongue-shaped.
Yeah.
So you just naturally slot it in,
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
You use your tongue, just crush it up. It's pretty simple. Luke, would you like to demonstrate how you eat your Pringles?
No.
Well, come, don't be shy. I'm sure, I'm sure there's someone watching that shares your method of doing this. So
I eat Pringles how anyone eats Pringles. I ate one Pringle or one around. I haven't shut up about it.
Yeah, but this is the 21st century, Luke. So any mistake you make, even if it's only one time, that's going to define you for the rest of your life. So
Amen.
Because that's how it works nowadays.
Try it.
We're just what's this?
Yeah, what? I mean, it just feels awkward. I feel like I'm gonna stab myself in the mouth with a
You gotta open your mouth way wider.
Yeah. I mean, fair play, But
Please get it now.
That through the clip. He just went, missed his mouth.
No, please come out.
That's so getting.
That's so the clip. You are zooming on the who one.
Oh, it's so
Who forgot he could open his mouth?
I did open my mouth. I just missed.
So, is there anything on that kind of area topic we want to talk about a bit more?
What, on Pringles or?
No. Well,
Yeah, about how you Pringles.
Well, aside from Pringles, but obviously, you mentioned something earlier today, Ben, about how Keir Starmer, there's this idea of he could become the UK's Justin Trudeau. Which is Justin Trudeau. What such a cringe, national leader.
Yeah, I actually don't understand how he is still. Well, I kind of do, but he, as I understand Canadian politics, he might be one of the worst Canadian prime ministers in recent memory, and they just keep re-electing him. Although there's no way he's going to win the next election because Pierre Poilievre, I think that's the name of his opponent, is just so charismatic. He's so funny. He's just he is 100% going to win the next election.
Wow.
No doubt about it. Well,
the only thing I really remember about Trudeau is that speech he gave where someone asked him a question about mankind, and he was like, "Nah, we don't use the word mankind. We use humankind."
I don't remember that. He's done a few things like that, but I don't remember that one.
But thinking of charismatic political leaders, it does bring to mind people like Nigel Farage and the Reform Party, and also it does bring to mind Trump. I think Trump's such an interesting example of a very charismatic, likable individual. And yeah, it's the fact that I was on Instagram the other day, shocker.
What are you joking?
But I can't remember what it was. I think it was. I came across Biden's presidential one of his campaign adverts or whatever, and it's it's one of the few sustained video clips in which he's verbally coherent. But I was just looking at the comments. I did to be fair, they could be bots, it could be paid, I don't know. But if they were genuine, it does really confuse me because there were comments on there that they seem to genuinely 100% support Biden and think his policies have helped America and whatnot. And it's just how out of touch do you have to be to genuinely hold those opinions?
Yeah, it's
and granted, okay, fair enough, you might not like Trump, okay, granted, but still regardless of that, why would you
I mean,
yeah.
fundamentally, I don't think anyone really supports Biden.
Mm.
Like, the 2020 election, put aside anything about its, like, validity, assume it's completely valid. The ballot could have said Trump and not Trump, and nothing would have changed. Like,
Yeah.
I don't. There's pictures of rallies for that election, and like 6 people show up to hear Biden speak. Like,
I think the people who support Biden are the like hardline Democrats. Even then, I think. Yeah. I think Trump's winning.
Yeah, there's I mean, all of the like polling data shows that, and all the polling data has always underestimated Trump and put him about 10 points behind, and then he either wins or loses by about a percentage. And now at the moment he's something like 8% ahead of, but like, which puts him on track for if they're underestimating it as much as they normally do, puts him on track for one of the like biggest electoral victories the Republicans have had in recent memory.
Well, I think it's the Democrats' own fault though. If Trump wins because they haven't got a candidate better than Trump did.
Mostly, but Trump is also just super. Like, I think even his biggest opponents have to admit he's really funny.
Oh yeah,
like when he gets to say, like, he's just very funny. And that sort of stuff wins a lot. It's kind of unfortunate. It's the like, Plato or Socrates, I can't remember. Their criticism of democracy, of like the sweet shop seller will always beat the doctor. Just because they're more likable. And you get that in debates as well.
Yeah.
Very often I'll watch a debate and I think, like, the guy who was right didn't win.
Yeah.
There's like Christopher Hitchens used to really perform well in debates just because he's so charismatic. Even if he's just saying nothing of substance, he says it well.
Which is like most of what he said.
Yeah, which is almost everything Christopher Hitchens said.
Yeah, I guess because I suppose that very much relies on how people are very emotion driven. Nowadays, like even more so. Like human beings have always been emotional creatures. That's how we're built. But nowadays even more so. And this is actually making me think about my PGC interview the other day and how part of the written task was discussing oracy skills in students. And part of the point I was trying to make in it was that when you need to try and teach kids to articulate themselves properly, because then they'll be a bit less susceptible to like groupthink, basically. Which is it's just so prevalent nowadays. And it is frustrating. I don't really know. I mean, I was going to bring up Pope Francis just then in the sense of like charismatic leaders, and it's just I think Pope Francis is interesting because I don't know. Well, I think maybe to be fair, maybe John Paul II is like the best example, like a pope who's like beloved by so many. Just because just how charismatic and likable he was, and I mean, Francis has a degree of that. Obviously, there's people called John Paul II, John Paul the Great. So it's like it's clear there's John Paul II is my patron saint for conversation. So I mean, I'm obviously biased, but anyway. The importance of like charisma, kind of, I suppose, in leadership. And with Pope Francis recently, like, I do wonder how some of the stuff he said recently have affected some people's perceptions of him. Because for a long time he was considered to be like the kind of, well, not soft pope, but like kind of open to liberal ideas, that sort of thing. Obviously, largely because the media just like cut off his quotes like in half, just so it sounds like he's supporting leftist, progressive agendas. But like recently his comments on people who should be admitted into seminaries, and the stuff regarding how like men or priests shouldn't do too much. What was it?
About how shouldn't chat. That's behavior.
Saying how men wear trousers. Which it sounds really bizarre and very funny coming from the Pope, but I don't know, because I do you think that's helped Francis in his general perception among Catholics at all, or do you think it's maybe
I think so. I can't gauge how that has been received if it's even been received at all. I don't even know if this news has gone out to non-Catholics.
Mm.
But I do think it's helped his image because the people who tend to... The Catholics who tend to be less supportive... Seems like the wrong word. This isn't a political system. It's the church.
Naturally.
Of the Pope were those who would lean more traditional.
Mm.
And the people who support him before, I think, will support him anyway.
Mm.
So it's almost like, I think this could foster a more sense of unity.
Mm.
I think that's positively affected his image. But
yeah. I mean, to be fair, yeah. I mean, I would agree as well, to be fair.
I think there's danger there in using that sort of language and in talking like that of shutting people out.
Well, to be fair, before you do go any further, some people viewing might not be sure what we're talking about exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So for clarification, I don't know, was it an interview or a conference? The seminary quote.
he was talking to a group of cardinals, I think.
Yeah. But essentially he was saying how, men with like homosexual tendencies shouldn't ideally really be admitted to seminary because obviously those are issues that you'd want to be sorted and not be an issue when you have men training to be priests.
Mm-hmm.
But the phrasing and wording he used for it, some people have seen it as kind of uncharitable because the word he used was Italian and it's basically a slur. However, and like Ben brought this up to me when we were chatting about it the other day, but like Italian is not his native language anyway, so it's very possible that he was just looking for a word.
This isn't the first time this has happened, where there's been some kind of comment made, people have taken it the wrong way, and the Vatican's clarification is like, Pope Francis, he wasn't speaking in his native tongue. He doesn't understand the complete what's the connotations of the word.
I still think it's very easy, particularly online. You see a lot of people jumping on it and being like, "Oh, Pope Francis is based." You have to remember that there's people who are going to be hearing that, who are going to be listening to that, who might be turned away from the faith because of it.
Yeah.
We not going to be critical of Pope Francis, he's the Holy Father, but it can be one of the issues that he's had throughout his papacy of not being clear. And I think it falls into the same thing, he wasn't careful with his language.
See, I would think of this as the opposite. Normally he gets quoted out of context because he doesn't answer things in sound bites, he answers them in verbal essays, and you need to understand it. And now he's using quite clear language. Well, it's quite... There isn't that sense of ambiguity in his language. It's very clear what he meant when he said that. Whether he chose the right words or not, the point he was trying to get across is unambiguous.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that.
I guess it's less much the point, it's just the way he gets the point across. And in this case, it's the use, it's specifically the kind of language, not so much like you were saying, but in the sense it's just you need to take everything he says in order to understand the point. Well, yeah, I mean, in a sense, it's kind of comforting in a sense because it also reminds you the Pope is a human being, which I think does maybe make him a bit more accessible. But no, I mean, I agree. I do agree with you, Luke, that there is a risk of obviously alienating certain people. When the Pope suddenly the news articles about him, using slurs and stuff. But again, I feel if you were genuinely, interested, that wouldn't in of itself really be enough to fully put you off Catholicism. I mean, I guess it's tricky because yeah. I mean, you ideally want to do as much as you can to draw people to the church. But I think maybe what point am I getting at?
I mean, you have to strike that balance between being pastoral and being orthodox in your teaching.
I thought he was Catholic.
And normally the criticism normally the criticism I think of all of the criticisms of Pope Francis are just that. I mean, the criticism is that he's being unclear, but the reasoning behind some of that is because he's being pastoral. If you actually understand him as just being pastoral, then it's quite clear. I think Pope Francis is much more theologically, if you can use the word conservative, than he gets credit for, but he's just very pastoral. And so he doesn't seem that way, and he does leave himself open to get quoted out of context. But then again, it's one of the things, this is something I've been reflecting on more recently, because I definitely did go through that time during my conversion of being probably uncharitable, I would say objectively uncharitable to the Holy Father. Because we're in such polarized times. Let's say the next Pope is Robert Serra, and he is, his papacy reflects very much what his ministry as a cardinal was, uses very strong, clear language. I think he's still going to get quoted out of context all the time by the media. I don't think that's Pope Francis's fault. I think it's just what the media is going to do from here on out.
Yeah, that kind of brings me to what just came to mind as you were speaking. But obviously, the Pope as the leader of the Church has a duty to basically just be. What's this word? To be, I guess, prudent in the way he says things. But yeah, at the end of the day, all the responsibility isn't on him, really, when you think about it. Because I've had this thought, but like you were saying, but online you saw other Catholic personalities just saying, "Oh, lol, Pope Francis is so based for using this slur against gay people," which obviously no, it's not based to use slurs against people. For clarification, it's wrong. But the issue. I think the main issue there is are the Catholics themselves, really. It's easy to forget that, we have responsibility for the perception of the Holy Father and how we, perceive him. And I think a lot of the issues with controversies with Pope Francis's papacy would be far less of an issue if most Catholics actually did their due diligence and research whenever some controversy seems to arise. And if they just actually had faith in the Holy Father as the Pope. I mean, Fiducia Supplicans is a great example of that. That caused so much controversy.
It caused controversy and no one actually read the document.
Honestly, yeah. But the irritating thing is then you had people claiming they did read the document and they were still sticking to their guns, saying how this, it's
saying things it clearly does not.
Yeah, if you read the document and you, with the understanding that, okay, so this doesn't contradict Catholic teaching, if you just you read it, no, it doesn't. It's I can see why people are getting confused and thinking it does, but yeah.
It's Pope Benedict, I think he's talking about Vatican II at the time.
Yeah.
Where he talks about the hermeneutic of continuity versus the hermeneutic of rupture. If you read the Vatican II documents, trying to find something that disagrees with Catholic teaching, you'll find it.
Yeah.
You can read it but if you read it and say, this is inspired, this is a definitive statement from an ecumenical council, it aligns with Catholic teaching. Now I will read the document.
Yeah.
There's no problems in it.
Yeah.
If you want there to be problems in it, you can force them. And I think the same is true with Fiducia Supplicans. Now, there was some legitimate criticism of, I think it was the CDF. The CDF had a clarification on Fiducia Supplicans, the day after it came out, and they didn't release it for about 2 months.
Right, yeah.
That could have really helped if they had put it out at the same time or straight afterwards.
Yeah.
The thing that I think a lot of Catholics online, I know I had to go through this, is with someone like Trump, when I would read an article about Trump saying, "Oh, Trump said this racist thing," immediately I was thinking he probably didn't.
Yeah.
But then I would read Pope Francis is a liberal. I'm like, he must be. I was giving politicians that I might agree with more politically way more charity than I was the Holy Father.
Yeah.
The Western world, the politicians, the media, want Pope Francis to be on their side. They want him to be a liberal. They want him to support all these things. So they'll do everything they can to convince you that he does. Because maybe someone who isn't a solidly practicing Catholic, or even someone who just respects Pope Francis, will read this article about fiducia supplicans and they'll be like, well, the Pope supports it, and it encourages their own agenda. Because there's 1.4 billion Catholics, but how many more billions look to the Pope for spiritual guidance or just as a source of authority? There's a reason the Vatican has its own seat at the UN. It's a respected authority. So you can get the Pope on side. That's what you think.
Yeah.
And they're not ashamed to lie and spread rumour.
So I do wonder I wonder how much damage a politician like Joe Biden or Nancy Pelosi, both of whom profess to be Catholics and clearly do not align with the church teaching, how much damage that causes. Because every time they talk about abortion and mention Biden, the media always loves to throw in Biden, a devout Catholic, which doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Practicing Catholic has a real definition. Devout Catholic can mean whatever you want it to mean. And so I think people want to. I think there's like an interested group, especially in the media, who will do something like that with Joe Biden, and they want to do it with Pope Francis as well.
Yeah.
To say, Pope Francis is a Catholic and supports these things, therefore you can as well as a Catholic.
I think you kind of get that as well with the topic of climate change, especially considering Pope Francis is just more vocal about that kind of issue. To be fair, that's actually a point I haven't. How do you even? I mean, now that you mention it, I guess it is kind of quite obvious. But I never thought about the fact that, if the media and politicians can make it seem as if the Pope seems to support what they're pushing, then how much influence actually has on people. Because there are so many Catholics that look to the Pope for that kind of thing. So that's an interesting point actually.
Well, this is the sort of thing that I was reflecting. Well, I was reflecting on. I can't even remember. I watched a video of American politics, but it's true over here as well.
Yeah.
Sort of 5%, something like that, of the UK population is Catholic. Let's say half of them are actually practicing Catholics. 2.5%. Now it won't in this election, but in a normal election, 2.5%, that's enough to sway an election because they're normally pretty much 50-50.
Yeah.
So if you say actually practicing Catholics can't vote for the Labour Party because of their support for abortion, well, if you can convince them the Pope supports abortion, you can sway that election.
Yeah. Well, I'll just quickly have a look at the catechism there. I wasn't doing scrolling there. So, and I mean, it's we have to support human life from conception. It's not one of those optional things. You can't be a Catholic, and I think one of the most harmful statements you can hear as a Catholic is, "I'm a Catholic, but." You simply cannot be a Catholic and say, "I'm okay with abortion."
Yeah.
And I mean, someone like Joe Biden, who uses his faith for his politics and supports abortion, he's not a Catholic if he's supporting abortion. You don't want to pass judgment on someone's faith, but
you can't call yourself a Catholic in good faith while blatantly transgressing the moral laws of the religion you claim to follow.
Practicing Catholic has a real definition. It's confession once a year, at least once a year. You should go more often. Mass once a year. Again, you should go every Sunday at least. Both of those have to be around Easter. And the attempt to live life in accordance with church teaching. I think it's those three. There might be a fourth one.
Yeah.
And politicians like Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi do not hit that third one.
The Catechism, paragraph 2271, refers to abortion and infanticide as abominable crimes. And when it comes to voting, when it comes to the media who say, "Oh, look, Joe Biden's a Catholic, but he supports abortion. Catholics can support abortion." It says no, and I do think there is argument to say you cannot, in good morals, vote for someone like Joe Biden, who is so pro-choice, because you are actively contributing to abortion. If you vote for abortion,
it's a system of murder. So
yes,
mass murder. So
yes, and I think. Any future employees, please don't listen to this one. But abortion is the gravest evil of our time, and it is the greatest moral issue. And I think as Catholics, particularly as practicing Catholics, we cannot just be like, oh, but it's part of a culture, so we can't do it. We have to fight to change it. And one of the ways we fight to change it is who we vote for, who we put our trust in, and just how we conduct ourselves.
I think we were talking before at the cafe, and I think it's prudent, I suppose, to mention it here, of the interesting question of, can a Catholic support a politician who disagrees with them less? So we can say the Labour Party in the UK, very pro-abortion. The Conservative Party is still pro-abortion, but less so. Can a Catholic in good conscience vote for the Conservative Party as the lesser of two evils? And there's an interesting question. I don't actually know the answer specifically.
I mean, that brings to mind people like Jacob Rees-Mogg to me, actually. Like, he's a self-professed practicing Catholic, and yet he's a Conservative MP. Now, Conservatives aren't as bad as Labour in a lot of issues, but like you said, they still are basically pro-abortion. And so I do wonder how he rationalises that in his mind.
Well, I think Jacob Rees-Mogg, if you look at his voting record, which is something everyone should do before they vote, look at your MP's voting record, he has voted almost entirely pro-life. I think the only times he hasn't has been from abstaining from the vote. So, to be fair, in this country, if you're not Conservative or you're not Labour, you don't hold any power. Because we're a first past the post system. So, it makes sense. If you are going to be a pro-life devout Catholic, it makes more sense to be Conservative, because the Conservative Party 50 years ago was staunchly anti-abortion. Fortunately, in order to win votes, the Conservative Party have basically become what Liberals were 5 years ago. But you see within the Conservative Party groups of these MPs who are actually Conservative, who are pro-life, who are more in line with right-wing Conservative views, because you saw under Boris Johnson, maybe not socially but certainly economically, the Conservative Party very much shifted more towards the right, and you see Labour under Corbyn versus Labour under Blair, two completely different parties. So there is a power in UK politics of swaying the party more one way. I think our job as voters is to try and sway the Conservative Party more to, or even the Labour Party, more to our views on life. How we do that, that's a big question.
I mean, like you were talking about earlier, one part of it is actually interacting with your MPs, emailing them, and like you said then, 2.5%, that's a considerable political body. So,
there might be more Catholics in the UK. I think it's about that. And then if you say half of those are Catholic in name only. Well, it seems like, so we talk about under Johnson, the Conservative Party seemed to at least shift right economically. I would say mostly, not a political analysis, that was to essentially kill off the Brexit Party. So you had the Brexit Party used to be a thing. They contested the election, won about 10% of the vote, and then practically disappeared. And I think it was because the Conservatives realised, if we shift right, we'll just absorb that more right-leaning party, essentially. Which is probably... I see some hope that the Reform Party could replace the Conservatives as the default right-wing party. I think it's in the same way of if you were in the early 20th century and you said, Labour will be the next left-wing party, Liberals will disappear. After the David Lloyd George, the biggest government Liberals ever formed, if you say they'll never form a government again, you'd get laughed out. But you'd have been right. I think there is some hope Reform will do that, but I think we should place more emphasis in vote Reform to force the Conservatives right, essentially, on issues like life.
But even then, Reform aren't a pro-life party.
No, but they're better.
Which is just... But don't lose hope.
Christ wins in the end.
Christ wins in the end.
Amen. But to be fair, in regards to like a party like Reform, I mean, it is still technically quite a young party as well. So they're still only just like finding MPs for constituencies. So arguably, you could say if Catholics got more involved in politics, it's very feasible you could get more newer MPs for Reform who are Catholic.
Absolutely.
And then imagine how much influence they'd have on the party.
Well, I would be blown away if someone like Jacob Rees-Mogg doesn't become a Reform MP. I think that's very likely that a lot of Conservatives will walk the floor, I guess.
I think that speaks to what Catholics need to do anyway, which is get more involved with public life.
Yeah.
So if you want to be an MP, like, try being an MP if you're a practicing Catholic.
Yeah.
Write on these things, like canvass and really try and sway the vote to be more in line with church teaching. But I also think that's true for a new party like Reform, not just on issues of life, but on like economic issues. Because where I think a lot of Catholics will struggle with the Conservatives or Reform is how they may react to like welfare or homelessness or taxes. But this is a new party, and we can sway it to be how we want it to be. There isn't a Catholic party, unfortunately. Maybe we can start one. Maybe
One day
become the first Catholic party of the UK.
Yeah.
Maybe this one.
Yeah. I need to finish my novel, make it better, so I don't have to worry about money, and then I should then go into politics.
Yeah.
And I can just ring you guys up whenever I like need political advice, which will be like every other hour because you know so much.
In the house,
we'll be like Green Alert on, like whispering in your ear. Expel Ben, kicking out the
politics is interesting, but I mean, speaking of politics though, obviously, there are certain characteristics which, are kind of associated or stereotyped with political alignment. And we were discussing the other day, and this has come up a few times, but in the sense of the basically, so, first of all, ask yourself a question, dear viewer. What's your favorite ice cream flavor? Okay, you got it? Okay, so have a think about what that flavor is. Because, like, other people have noticed, and we've picked up on this as well, that the flavor of ice cream you like tends to align usually with your political beliefs in some regard. Ben is probably the best example of this.
Okay.
So you can take it away.
So this came from, I think it's John Doyle was like debating destiny, and he made this point. In his words, vanilla is an inherently right-wing flavour, in his words. And he's kind of right. And then he asked Destiny his favourite ice cream, and it's something like super wacky, and he was like, yeah, that's because you're a liberal. I have noticed this in my life. Like, my favourite flavour of ice cream used to be like blue candy floss. And I used to like pizza with like loads of different toppings. And then as I've slowly like matured in my political and faith views, my favourite flavour of ice cream is vanilla, and my favourite pizza is like margarita. There's something, I think it speaks to, I do think there's actually a point here. I think it speaks to something bigger in our society, that what people call right wing is just kind of normal people. The fact that vanilla gets used as a synonym for the word normal, and then I think it speaks of being more right wing, just shows me how what was normal is now right of centre.
Well, I mean, right wing extremism today is having a family and being normal.
Yeah, just normal.
It makes sense. I mean, I disagree. I think pepperoni is the most right-wing pizza flavour there is, but
it's got grease on it.
Yeah.
I mean, Greece is kind of right wing.
Yeah.
Nah, I don't think so. Greece is like, it speaks to like fast food. It's like hedonism.
To be fair, no, that's a good point actually. To be fair,
yeah, I think all pizza. I think pizza.
I mean, to be fair, pizza is kind of real.
They talk about pizza and ice cream, both insanely unhealthy foods.
Yeah.
What is your favorite ice cream flavor, Luke?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I need to think about it.
Yeah, and that's that. I mean, I can say mine while you're thinking, but for me, it would be mint chocolate chip. There's just something that I just.
That's
Also, like people who say mint chocolate chip tastes like toothpaste, like they just don't brush their teeth.
Yeah.
It's something that they just don't like dental hygiene.
That's so good.
Like, mint is a
It's
delicious.
refreshing.
Exactly, it's refreshing.
Oh,
You get a nice cool feeling, and the texture of the chocolate chips as well. It's delicious.
I'll say pistachio.
Pistachio. Ooh,
That's a right wing flavour.
See, I'd say that's kind of like artisanal right wing.
Yeah, you could be a champagne socialist and like pistachio.
But I think pistachio still fits the mold fairly well because it's a natural flavour. You've just got
it's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
Actually true.
Yeah, it's based on reality. It's right wing.
Yeah. I mean, like I think it's interesting when I think about mint chocolate chip because it is I'd say it's a classic ice cream flavour. But it is a little bit more out there. It's green first of all. That's a little wacky.
It's like nature is green.
Oh yeah, but usually the reason why it's green is not because the mint in it. It's because they've coloured it. So and it's so a little bit. You've got mint, you've got chocolate, But to be fair, I think it still works, especially because mint and chocolate, that's like an old people kind of thing. That makes me think of like the 20th century, basically. After eights, you guys have had after eights.
I love after
eights. No, like leftist liberal, who with dyed hair goes out and buys a pack of after eights. I'm just saying. And if you do, maybe you're actually right wing.
Right. So normally I would say vanilla is the most right wing flavour. I think there is a case to be made that rum and raisin is more conservative than vanilla.
I agree with you. I agree with you, actually. Yeah.
Rum and raisin is like British right wing, like Tory. Upper class right wing. Vanilla is like kind of normal right wing.
Vanilla is like the old Liberal Party.
Yeah.
No, actually, no. I think it's the other way around. I think rum and raisin is like classically liberal right wing, and vanilla enjoyers are like the young trads who have like 9 kids.
Jacob Rees-Mogg would be a rum and raisin.
He's so rum. Yeah. I almost feel like I've seen a clip of him saying rum and raisin is his favourite. I can imagine him saying that in my head too easily. I feel. Yeah, it is my favorite. This is my mum's favourite flavour, and she's a devout Polish Catholic. So
it's a great flavour.
These are all natural ice cream flavours, so nature is beautiful.
Yeah, like blue candy flavour. It wasn't even meat. If you have to name in the ice cream flavour that it's been dyed with food colouring, like candy floss is not blue inherently. You have to make it blue, and it's candy floss.
But it is kind of nice.
This is the thing. All ice cream is like delicious. But
I've had some weird ones, but yeah.
But it's just an interesting observation.
We spent a long time at the cafe going through different things.
We
like how you have your eggs.
We started doing denomination foods. So Catholic food is something like pizza or like tacos. One because they come from Catholic countries. But it's food you have on the table and everyone like runs and grabs it.
Yeah, if you put a big thing in the middle of the table and everyone eats from it, it's Catholic food.
Well, because everyone can eat from the church.
It's a community-based meal.
Yeah,
like the churches.
But like Protestant meals are like, a fry up whatever.
When you say Protestant, you mean like specifically like old Anglican sort of like the sort of thing that you would eat and read the newspaper and not talk to your family while you.
It makes me think of soup, to be honest. Which I think is like I think soup can go both ways. You could have like a big pot in the middle and people are helping themselves to it, and you've got like a hunk of bread. But to be fair, you get served like your.
I don't know. We did say anything that's sort of like warm and liquidy is like orthodox, like a stew or something.
Well, I think that's my soup. I could fit maybe into like old Anglican kind of in that sense.
Well, I think soup is Catholic.
Soup is Catholic.
Because soup kitchens exist and most soup kitchens are Catholic.
That's true.
Like who invented charity?
That always annoys me when I hear or like see something online about like the Catholic Church like like, oh, they've got all this money, they make these fancy churches, but they spend it on the poor. Like, well, yeah, they do spend it on the poor.
Biggest charitable organisation on earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they could like sell St. Peter's Basilica and sell all the churches. Because the Catholic Church will only exist for like charity.
Have you seen someone did the projection on it? If you sell, I think they just did Rome. You sell every Catholic church in the Vatican and Rome. Now this will be theoretically like the most ornate, the most valuable churches should be in like St. Peter's is priceless. How long could you feed the world's hungry for? And it's 3 days, something like that. And then you would lose that sort of artistic treasure that's been stewarded for thousands of years. Like it would disappear overnight.
Yeah.
And then probably get knocked down and like you'd build like a high rise and a mall.
But I guess, to be fair, I guess it also just shows like a gross misunderstanding of why it's there. You know, like Catholic Church doesn't have all this stuff because we like flashy gold stuff and jewels. Like, actually, human beings, we do like them, but like they're not there for us. You know, they're there for God and to lift the mind to God. Which is why postmodernist architecture is cringe, because it doesn't do that.
This was during adoration today. This was my reflection. I was really reflecting on God as the good, the true, and the beautiful. And it's just in that sense that beauty lifts the mind to God. So I had this reflection because I was listening on the way to Mass. I was listening to a classical piece by Ludovico Einaudi, Primavera. I could rant about it for the rest of this episode. I love that piece. And just to think, this isn't an inherently religious work of music as far as I'm aware. I don't know Ludovico Einaudi's religious persuasion. But this lifts my soul to God way more than like a really bad song that's actually about Jesus. Like, this is the transcendent beauty that you're trying to capture in real beauty. And then also you have, if God is the good, the true, and the beautiful, well, he's the good, so like feeding the homeless, something the Catholic Church does more than any other organisation, because it's the good. And then true, and my other reflection was, really, most other religions don't actually go out and defend their claims. Now, when was the last time you saw a debate where someone defended the existence of Rama and Sita in Hinduism? Like, it just doesn't happen. It's just sort of taken as a given, as you believe this because you've been told it. Whereas Christians can really say, no, the resurrection happened and we can prove it, and I will debate anyone who wants to. Like, I want to go and share that for people. And you do see it in Islam as well. Muslims are strong proselytizers, but then when it actually comes to like high profile debates, they use a lot of like shady tactics, and then will run from debates and
It's on the beautiful side of it. And if you have gone to St. John the Baptist Cathedral, you'll see just how beautiful it is. But this is what these architects, in the Gothic period with Gothic architecture, and then again in the Victorian period with the Victorian Gothic revival, the Catholic Church can be criticised because it's invested all this money in art and architecture and these beautiful things, but they uplift the soul to God. It's spreading the gospel not just through words, but through the buildings, through the art, through like literature as well. So like C.S. Lewis or like J.R.R. Tolkien, like humans, we're body and soul. There's a reason we kneel before the altar. There's a reason, like, we make the sign of the cross before we pray, because we're body. How we act influences our views. And by being able to walk into this grand cathedral where it's bright colours and stained glass windows and the architecture is just beautiful, it points your soul to God. Like, you're seeing God in the beauty. And that's why we need St. Peter's Basilica. That's why we need St. John the Baptist Cathedral. Not saying
beyond just that though, because you can have these like cathedrals are built to be beautiful, or at least they should be built to be beautiful and lift the soul of God. In fact, I'll ask you. So, what would you say is explicitly non-religious things lift your soul most to God through their beauty? So, for music, like I said earlier, Primavera, Ludovico Einaudi. Art, something like Wander Over a Sea of Fog, like something like that painting strikes me. will hit me more and help my faith and really help me to pray more than something like a really bad like 60s hymn.
Yeah.
So what do you have any like real examples of a non-religious thing that helps you interact with God because of its goodness, trueness, and beauty?
Yeah. I mean, you guys know I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I love my Tolkien. I wrote my dissertation on it last semester. Well, on C.S. Lewis's 90 books as well. But yeah, I mean, the inherent beauty in Tolkien's fantasy is something that, it's always, usually never fails to affect me. And, it's not overtly Catholic. I mean, it is Catholic, in terms of its essence, but arguably you could say everything good is Catholic. Because God is goodness, so, that's just how it works. But yeah, stuff like that. I mean, for me, music as well, to be fair. It's interesting because I listen to a lot of movie soundtracks. I wonder if you could maybe, well, I don't know, maybe, to be fair, I don't know, maybe I'll get flamed for that. I was going to say maybe you could argue that like soundtracks nowadays, because of how, I mean, you can get an Oscar for a movie's best soundtrack, that kind of thing. Well, do you get an Oscar for best soundtrack for a movie?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But the point, you can get high-profile awards for just the music in the movie, regardless of the movie itself. But anyway, my point is that I wonder if, in a way, soundtracks for movies and even games nowadays, you could maybe say they're almost like progression of classical music in a sense, when you think about it.
Maybe not classical, but like certainly opera.
Yeah, I was thinking of opera. You've got Wagner and stuff, music that was set to a story. Like it's not too different from that, really. And yeah, I mean, there are some, tracks from movies that I think are beautiful. There's this one from the Shawshank Redemption. I can't remember the name of. Maybe the track is just called the Shawshank Redemption or something. But to be fair, while you're talking, Luke, I can. Actually, I can't look at my phone's recording, but. Yeah, it's actually such a poignant, beautiful piece of music. And I think in the movie it plays basically while the main character is essentially it's like a montage of him adjusting to prison life, and it's him constantly getting harassed by like these inmates and stuff. So like in terms of the plot, it's during quite a heartbreaking sequence, but the piece of music itself is beautiful. Luke, I don't know if you want to maybe start.
Well, I feel quite unoriginal. I mean, Wanderer over the Sea of Fog, to me, it's this idea of like, early on in my conversion, I'm standing and it's just like fog before me, basically. I mean, if you know the picture. Yeah, I really see myself as standing there. It really points me to the unknown of faith, I feel. And how beautiful sort of being able to go into the unknown is. Something like literature for me, like a good book really points towards like beauty. Like poetry is, even if it's not explicitly religious, particularly poetry about nature, I find, and nature itself, this is created by God, so obviously, but like walking around UEA Lake, or being by the sea, or there's moments of like quiet solitude, where it's just you and the birds singing and trees and water, and it's not explicitly Catholic, well, it is because it's created by God, but it's something that is so, yeah, I think that really like points your mind and your heart to God. I did have it once with a painting I saw, and it was a beautiful painting. It wasn't religious, I can't remember the painting, I can't even describe it, but I just remember feeling like, wow, that God is good in that.
Yeah. Just like in front of the name of the track, it's called Stoic Theme. I think that's the name of the track, but from the Shawshank Redemption. So give it a listen when you get the chance, because it's really beautiful.
But I think this points to something I was reflecting on recently. Like, we are created in the image and likeness of God, and God is the creator. We naturally have an inclination to both create beautiful things, but to consume beautiful things. We have the inclination to draw, just as we have the inclination to look at other people's art. Like, we have the inclination to write, just as we have the inclination to read. I think every human being, and it expresses itself differently from everyone. Some people it might be more practical, like carpentry, or for some people it might be to do with words or music. But we all have this sort of natural desire to create and to create beautiful things.
I think it speaks of our state before the fall.
Mm.
So Adam in the garden, yes, he's there. The garden is spoken about as a paradise, but actually reading Genesis, a point that gets lost quite often, is it's Adam's mission to expand the Garden of Eden. He's to keep and work the garden. So he is both there to enjoy the garden and to be partakers in creation. Expanding the garden, like God makes humans, and then the first command he gives to humans is to make more humans.
And this is where like it gets corrupted with brutalist architecture. How can anyone look at that and think that's something worth building? Practicality of it, maybe, but most of them aren't even practical.
The thing is, the bizarre thing is that for something to be beautiful, it doesn't even have to be like incredibly ornate or something. It's not like every building has to be like neo-Gothic or something, you know. Even though, I mean, if every building
I wouldn't
complain. But there's just something as
that like Victorian brick style is
Yeah.
not impractical at all, and
Yeah.
it's so nice.
Yeah, I mean, even something simple, just like a nice table. Like,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't use these things example.
No.
These are alright. They're just
They're
kind of
functional.
functional. But just like a nice dining room table. Like it's nothing incredibly fancy. It's nice wood and just nicely carved. Like that is beautiful. You know, in the same way a cathedral is.
It'd be out of shot, but the fireplace here.
Yeah.
There is so much design. None of that needs to be decorated, but someone looked at it and thought, no, it should be though.
Yeah.
Because it looks nice. It doesn't serve any function other than to make it look nicer.
Yeah. Okay, so essentially, when we went out to have a break, my phone recorded for 8 more minutes and then stopped, and we've got 10 minutes left of storage space, essentially, to break down what we just spoke about for like the past 20 minutes plus.
Yeah, it was really. This was like
It was so
something you have to hear.
It was actually such a beautiful conversation.
really was.
So it's actually tragic, but evidently it was not meant for your ears. But I'll roughly summarize it. So essentially, Luke was received into the church recently at Pentecost. Ben obviously was received into the church a year and a half ago. So essentially, you're just discussing how it feels, to go along that faith journey, that kind of thing, and how Ben's sort of experience of watching Luke grow in the faith has affected his understanding of it. And basically, we came down to the point of how, being a Catholic, especially for a convert, you feel this, particularly it's the sense that you have to maintain it every day. It's not like this big climactic point and that's it, you're a Catholic.
It's a daily conversion.
It's a daily conversion. So that was essentially what we were getting at. And I spoke about how my experience watching these two guys grow in the faith is that grace is cumulative, or however you pronounce it. So, it builds up over time, and increases in momentum. And I was just saying how I think it's particularly demonstrative in how quickly I've become fast friends with these guys, with Igor included, who sadly isn't here. But with Igor, it took maybe a year or so and a bit in the first year to get to know him better, to become, best friends with him. Ben, less time, more like 6 months. Luke, barely 6 weeks. So, obviously I love these guys so much. And basically, we were getting a bit soppy and sentimental, saying how glad we were to be here.
Ben was crying, tears streaming down his eyes.
And me and Luke, we were both rejected from our first university choices, him from Durham, me from Cambridge. We were just saying how we're so glad that we were rejected because we benefited so much more coming here. And I mentioned how, for me, it feels like in the past couple months, my studies haven't even felt like the main thing. It's been more like my faith. However, having said that, we also emphasize that you should commit to your studies if you're a student. That's your vocation at that moment of time. So, there's that balance there. But kind of just that idea of, growing in your faith makes you realize how important your faith actually is, and some things can kind of diminish. But it also helps you appreciate more things in your life. Like for Luke, he said how he's, helped him realize how much he loves history, and how that's why you're doing a master's, and that kind of thing. So I think that's kind of the gist.
I think
of
we're
what
talking
I think it's kind of sad that you summarised the whole thing in like 2 minutes.
It was a lovely exchange, and I'm so sad you didn't see it.
Well, thank you, Jamie.
No, that's okay. Thank you, guys. At the end of it is that we're all very blessed, we're all very thankful for each other and for God. And God is good. And
it's
God always puts you where you're needed and where people need you, essentially.
And I think the thing to say is don't be afraid.
Yeah.
That's what Jamie missed out from his summary.
Oh yeah. John Paul's second quote.
Yeah. Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. Yeah. I do quite like how giving that profound John Paul II quote while wearing a Barbie. It's very funny image.
Because I'm not afraid to wear the Barbie bucket.
Really, it's so true. But yeah, but on that note, unless there's any, considering this might be the last Galilee episode for a while, do you guys have any last words, so to speak?
I wasn't prepared for this.
I could yap something while you have a think, but well. If you're watching this after having watched all the other episodes, just thank you very much for following us on this journey. A lot has happened in our lives since this series began, and God willing, it could continue. But life happens. People get busy. We'll see if other episodes are made. But regardless if they are or not, we really appreciate you taking the time to listen and watch our discussion. We hope they've been entertaining, maybe edifying as well, despite our collective stupidity. But yeah, for me, I can just say it's been a real blessing. To be fair, for a long time, I wanted to do some kind of podcast. I remember back home before I even came to Norwich, I used to tell my friends, "Oh, guys, we should have a podcast." It was like a running joke that I would say, "Let's start a podcast," and I never did really. But thanks for letting that happen, guys. And it's a podcast about the most important thing in the world, which is God and the faith, and that informs everything else. So. Well, I can really say I'm very happy I've done this. Thank you, guys. Love you.
Yeah. Love you too, Jamie.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't quite know how to follow that. Just, you nailed it, yeah?
Fair.
Thank you for letting me be part of
Yeah, of course. Of course, regardless of what happens after this video is uploaded, there'll probably still be a few more videos uploaded, not specifically of Galilee, but some other things. Ben and I, we're trying to finish off Don and Nova's Passion. We'll try and crank out a third episode, so at least there's a trio of them, and also more Campus Catholics interviews, hopefully before the end of the academic year fully.
Shout out Hallowed.
Oh,
shout out Hallowed. Intro music.
Shout out Hallowed. Thank you, Hallowed, for your music and allowing us to use it throughout this whole thing. Yeah. Check out Hallowed's music. Well, there'll probably be a link in the description. On that note, I think we'll end it there. So thank you for watching. I actually don't really know how to end it, but thanks for watching. If you're watching this video, you know what all our other videos are, most likely. Please do go watch them. Shout out to our pilgrimage vlog video, it's very entertaining. Do watch that if you haven't already. And God bless.
God bless.
God bless. Jamie, make this the ending clip. This is cheese and lettuce. This is a classic Beckles snack. And I get so much hate for this. You just cut a bit of cheese, wrap it in lettuce. You get the milky, this is a bit of a nuttier cheese. You get the crispness of the lettuce. It's just one of the greatest snacks ever made. You don't get it. It's a great snack. You take a bite.